talked about the movies that gave me hope, the movies that made me smile, the movies that surprised me throughout the year, the movies that kind of made me hopeful for what cinema will have to offer in the next coming years, whether that's visionary filmmakers, intriguing ideas, great storytelling. Now let's do movies that gave me nightmares, the movies that make me look at cinema and go, no, this is not what I wanted. This is not good. This is just some of these movies are pure torture. Some of these movies just made me angry. Some of these movies, actually, all these movies made me angry for one reason or another. But let's just dive into it. Let's just dive into my worst movies of 2024. Let's start off with a few dishonorable mentions. Megalopolis, Francis Ford Coppola's magnum opus, apparently, his passion project for 50 years, and it is absolutely insane. It is absolutely boring, too. It is a movie where it's either one of those two things. It is a waste of time, a waste of talent, waste of money. Despite a few attentions to detail, nothing else works. The Watchers. This is the best and worst of M. Night Shyamalan at the same time. At times it's intriguing. At times it's funny. At times it made me mad. It was pointless to me. The Killer's Game. When I saw the trailer, it's like, oh, this could be fun, but it also kind of looks like a Netflix movie. And this movie is somehow worse than some other Netflix movies out there. Like, this came out around the same time as The Union, which wasn't particularly good. The Instigators, which also wasn't particularly good. But those movies at least had the right to be on streaming services. The Killer's Game did not. It is not funny. The action is just mid at best. I did not have a good time with this movie. Unfrosted, Jerry Seinfeld's Pop-Tart joke, and yet the joke was on us because this movie is not very funny. It has a lot of really random references. It has a lot of good actors in it, but what a waste of time, what a waste of talent. It is just not fun or funny. Despicable Me 4. Just let this franchise die. Just let it die. It's a waste of everyone's time. It is not fun. It is not funny. It's just sad at this point. Don't watch it. Also, Y2K. Why did I sit through this movie? To give everything a chance. This movie is not really that fun. It's not really that funny. It's not really that scary. It kind of tries to be a little bit of everything, and yet I could not care about anything that happened in this movie or anyone who's involved in this movie. I did not care. The Garfield movie. Man, just when you thought that Bill Murray's Garfield movies couldn't get more insulting, we have the Garfield movie, a movie that is somehow even worse. It's not funny. It's stupid. Lift, a very generic heist movie starring Kevin Hart. It is bad. And it's actually done by a director who's actually done good heist movies before. I don't understand it. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scar Giver. This movie is... I didn't review this movie, but my god, it was so boring. Nothing in it was interesting. The only times it was actually kind of funny... Actually, no. The only times it was interesting, it was when it was funny. Like, they use the Scar Giver as, like, this actual name that people actually use. That is a name that even 12-year-olds would say is stupid. My god, I could not care about anyone in this movie. I could not bother with this movie. I could not pay attention to this movie, and yet I just don't care. I just really don't care. I really, really don't like this movie. I'm so sick of Zack Snyder saying, oh, just wait until the director's cut. Just wait until the director's cut. You're on Netflix, dude. Your movie should be the director's cut. You can't just have a director's cut every time someone does not like your movie. I am so sick of it. Keep in mind, too, Lucasfilm said no to this movie. Think about that for a minute. Afraid, one of many other horror movies on this list. It is not scary. It could be intriguing with the whole AI factor, but I just thought the whole family was just stupid. I thought the twists at the very end were just stupid. It's at least 80 minutes. I'll give it that. The Strangers, Chapter 1. My god. It is like they took everything from the first Strangers movie and just did it again. It is pointless. It is stupid. I couldn't care. And also, the ending of the movie makes it feel like this wasn't just an isolated incident. Not only are you trying to be the Strangers, but you're also trying not to be the Strangers. It is really stupid, in my opinion. Founders Day. I guess I can't be too mad at this movie because it looked like it only cost like $10 to make. But it is still stupid. It's like they took The Purge and Scream, tried to make them into one movie and such, and it is just not fun. It's not even goofy enough. It's just stupid. Imaginary, a movie that is pretty dull and then has some interesting world building, but never really does anything with it. I was just so bored throughout this movie. I was not scared once. Somehow, a movie from the director of Fantasy Island and Truth or Dare is on my dishonorable mentions and not in my top 10. And the last dishonorable mention here, Robert Zemeckis, Tom Hanks, Robin Wright, Eric Roth, all of them returning from Forrest Gump to make this movie that is emotionally manipulative without any real character development. It is vignettes of a Hallmark movie. Even Hallmark movies are better than this, and I never thought I would say that, given the talent involved. So let's dive into my actual top 10 worst movies of 2024 list. And kind of like with my best of the year list, there are going to be movies on this list that I did not talk about. So I'm just going to talk about them here. I'll talk, it depends on the reason why, but I'll talk about it. At number 10, Night Swim. Started off the year with this movie, might as well start off my list with this movie. This movie was stupid. A haunted pool? Come on. And you're going to take it as seriously as humanly possible? You gotta be kidding me. It couldn't follow its own logic half the time. It is a lot of exposition. I was not scared while watching this movie at all. At number 9, Reagan. Now, I tried to not talk about this movie because this movie did come out in an election year, and I try not to talk about movies that lean one way or the other. But Reagan is a special case because it is a movie that is so boring and it's so long. Dennis Quaid is fine as Reagan, but I wouldn't say he's like good or bad. Jon Voight in this movie is so horrible that his accent is actually worse than his accent in Anaconda. Think about that for a moment. A lot of stuff just does not make a lot of sense. Some stuff is just left out, and I felt like it was kind of weird at times. Like they don't mention that Ronald Reagan got divorced at one point. You might want to mention that in your 2.5-hour movie. And they also kind of make a lot of jokes. It kind of glosses over a lot of stuff, kind of just ignores some of the bad things that might have happened during his time. And I'm not here saying, I support Reagan, I supported everything he did, or I'm against Reagan. I'm just kind of look at this movie and kind of go, this was a movie that was clearly done by people who unabashedly loved him and had no issues with him whatsoever. And it just felt hollow. I did not care for this movie whatsoever. At number 8, Harold and the Purple Crayon. Here's my quick review of it. Watch Elf instead because that movie is so much better. It has better characters, it has better jokes, it has better lines, it has better visuals. This movie is embarrassing. Everyone involved in this movie should be embarrassed. Zachary Levi should be embarrassed. This movie has horrible jokes, horrible product placement. It is very bland. I could not care about anything that happened in this movie. At number 7, Dear Santa, making my list, checking it twice, and yeah, this movie's on there. It's on my naughty list. This movie is horrible. It was one of those movies I heard was coming out for a while, and I never knew when it was coming out exactly. And then like 2 weeks before it was coming out, they were like, hey, we're releasing this movie. I'm like, oh, okay, that's where that movie went. It looks awful. It looks like it belongs on a streaming service. Even it's worse than that. It is embarrassingly bad. A bad comedy is torture, and this movie is a comedy dead zone. I did not laugh once while watching this movie. Jack Black is just becoming incredibly annoying at this point. I used to love this guy, but like his movies now, I'm just not excited anymore. He has another one on this list. But the main character, too, is somehow even worse. I hated the main character in this movie. I did not laugh while watching this movie. This is one movie where if you feel like you have too much Christmas spirit, watch this movie and yeah, it will be gone in a second. Yeah, just don't. At number 6, Tarot. Somehow, this is the worst horror movie this year. It is a PG-13, awful scare fest where hardly anything in this movie makes sense. I was bored, I was falling asleep while watching this movie, and I did not miss a single thing. It was sad. It's a movie that thinks because it's PG-13, they can cut around the scares. You can get away with a lot in a PG-13 movie. There are really good, scary PG-13 movies out there. This is not one of them. This is a movie where it thinks like if you just pan up to the ladder that it's using, that ladder that's crushing someone, that it's going to be okay for a PG-13. Again, you can get away with a lot. This movie has so many cliches. The only thing that was kind of interesting were the designs of the cards. That's it. The characters sucked. The story sucked. I was hopped up on caffeine while watching this movie, and I still fell asleep. Think about that. And somehow, that's only number 6. At number 5, Saving Bikini Bottom. I don't even remember what the subtitle was, but my God. What happened to SpongeBob? I have not watched a SpongeBob episode since 2014. Or at least a new episode of SpongeBob. But I hope those episodes are better than this. This movie is shockingly bad. The animation Some of the animation is just really awful. The live action stuff is really awful. Some of the stuff involving SpongeBob is really stupid. And SpongeBob is kind of just a side character in his own movie. I kind of want to see more Sandy Cheeks in the SpongeBob world, but not like this. It is embarrassing. But not as embarrassing as my number 4 pick, which is kind of similar, Megamind versus the Doom Syndicate. I had never seen a movie, like a movie sequel, that was so embarrassed of its first entry. And the first entry is actually pretty good. I actually really like the first Megamind movie. And this movie just was dumped on Peacock, of all places. One of the lower streaming services. And it is embarrassing. It's like it was embarrassed to be part of Megamind. This is my Joker Folie à Deux because it clearly was embarrassed by its success. I did not think it was interesting. It felt very subpar in quality. It felt very made for TV. It goes against everything the first movie built up to. Don't bother. Do not bother. At number 3, The Crow. More like The No. Somehow Bill Skarsgård gives a worse performance than his performance in Boy Kills World, where he doesn't say a word. The Crow is absolutely boring. It looked horrible. It looked gross. It looked awful. The visuals are awful. It has no character. It has no energy. It's just... it was bad. It was so bland and so boring. It was DOA on arrival, and I was falling asleep. At number 2 is going to be a 2-for because it's from the same universe, Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter. I ranted about those two movies for about 20 minutes apiece, and they both deserve it. Madam Web is horrible. I could not care about anyone. The ADR was awful. Its inside jokes were awful. I hated pretty much everything about that movie. A lot of it did not make any sense. Kraven the Hunter was also hilariously bad, but I think this one may be more hilariously bad because at least I was watching with people who were laughing, whereas no one was laughing during Madam Web. But Kraven is embarrassingly bad. It is hilarious. It is shocking to me that these movies kept making the same mistakes over and over again and expected different results. They are embarrassing. I'm so glad that Sony Spider-Man-less universe is over with. Don't do this ever again, Sony. Don't. But my number 1 worst movie of 2024 was Borderlands. I can't even make a joke that's borderline boring. This movie, for something to be borderline, it has to be almost. This movie is boring. Everyone involved looks bored. Cate Blanchett, Jamie Lee Curtis, Kevin Hart. Everyone looks so bored in this movie. Jack Black is so obnoxious in this movie, and it's just his voice. Everyone is doing the bare minimum, barely the bare minimum even. It has the most basic story, the most basic villain. It steals jokes from Spaceballs and Lethal Weapon. How did this movie come about? How did this movie happen? And it turns out, they wanted to make an R-rated movie, but the studio executives were like, no, make it PG-13. And also, Eli Roth was, he was directing at first, was trying to make it an R-rated movie, but then they brought on Tim Miller, who directed Deadpool 1 to make it PG-13. Tell me where the logic in that is. And they just wasted so much time, so much talent, so much money, and I was not interested in the least bit. I could not care about this movie one bit. It just kind of, the only thing it really did was make me realize video game movies suck still. And, there's some good video game stuff out there. Last of Us, Fallout, Super Mario Brothers was at least decent. But, my God, Borderlands, just don't. Just don't ever do movies like that again. Just don't. Just don't. So, what were some of the worst movies of 2024 in your opinion? Comment down below. Subscribe to the channel. This is Pat. Stay safe.